So hello everyone. This is yet another webinar, Sunday webinar by Welcome Solutions. And today we have a distinguished guest, Mariam Kostandyan. And Mariam obtained her PhD in experimental and neurocognitive psychology from Ghent University in Belgium. And she was working with multimodal neurocognitive and behavioral techniques. And then after her PhD, she decided to step outside academia, and today she works as a research consultant at a recruitment agency whose name I cannot really spell.
I can pronounce it later. It's okay. We're not gonna do publicity for them, so that's okay.
I don't know how to spell this name. It's just a very sophisticated name. Okay, thank you so much, Mariam, for accepting our invitation. I'm very excited that you're here with us. Especially given that you have experience with hiring executives. That's really one of the very hot positions that many PhDs actually are searching for. So yes, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. And firstly, I would like to ask you. This is actually this is a typical way in which we usually start this webinar. So if you could please tell us a little bit about your personal story from your own perspective and about your PhD and about why you took a decision to change a career. So all in your own words, how your career looked so far.
Yeah, thanks Natalia for inviting me to this webinar. Thank you everybody who joined so far as well to listen to it at this super sunny, nice evening. At least in Belgium, it's super sunny. So my personal story. Maybe I will start just quickly noting that I also did my master's studies in Germany, in Munich, and it was also very hardcore neurocognitive psychology. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because I remember on one of the first days, welcoming first days in my master program, they basically told us that we are preparing academics. So we're preparing PhD students, we're preparing people who in the long term will stay in academia. And it's a very fundamental science. So that's how back then I was thinking, okay, this is indeed something that I wanted to do, and that was the case. And after 2 years of studies there, I applied for the PhD position in Ghent University, which is in Belgium and not far from Brussels. It's a lovely, beautiful city, Ghent. And I did my PhD there for 4 years. PhD was indeed, as Natalia mentioned, in experimental. Well, department was the experimental psychology, but the PhD was more in neurocognitive psychology. So quite fundamental thing for people who do not really know much what it is. It's basically the studies of different psychological processes. Mental processes, for example, attention, for example, perception, or for example, a little bit higher level cognitive processes like language, decision making, for example. Studies of these fundamental psychological processes on the level of the brain, simply putting it. So what we do, we would give our participants of the experiment some tasks, like psychological tasks. In my case, we would give some tasks for the multitasking tasks that require a lot of multitasking or require task switching or some conflicting tasks as well. And basically what we will do while those people are performing those tasks, we would record their brain activity in one way or another. We would use EEG. It's like a cap that you put on the head with the different electrodes. It's record the brain waves, or we would put the person in the fMRI scanner. It's it's like this classy tomograph scanners that you see in a hospital, you know. And we would get like these beautiful pictures of the brain, and then we would analyze them. So that's basically what I did. It's very fundamental research. not really applicable to the outside world, or applicable with a very delayed time. So you do very fundamental research, as I mentioned, and that's always a funny thing. Whenever you present your work, if you hear from the audience a question, so what is actually the application of your study? You go, oh no, oh my God, no, not this question again, because then you have to come up with some ridiculous things like, it's good, it's attention. So, people who are pilots, for example, of the planes, they should be really attentive. So you try to come up with this really bizarre and sometimes a bit funny applications of your studies. So that's what I basically did. And the reason why I'm saying it, that despite the fact that it was a super fundamental research, there is still a possibility to quit it if you want it, and to find something outside the academia. And that's what exactly I did. I think on the third year, in the end of my second year, I started bit by bit realizing that probably academia is not exactly what I would like to do in the long run. And the reason why I came to that conclusion, there were actually a couple of reasons. I think the first reason was more related to the fact how my PhD evolved. It was a bit, the studies that I got involved right in from the beginning were a bit too heavy in a way. It was very difficult. There were very difficult paradigms. There were very difficult methodologies. And I was basically one person dragging all this research by myself. So it kind of got a bit complicated for me. I realized that I didn't have much of the support from my peers, because back then we didn't have a lot of people in our lab. So I got a bit, in a way, not burned out, but I was a bit, I was questioning a lot of things, actually. Another thing that I realized that it's the fundamental research brings a lot of frustration, and it's a frustration coming from the fact that you don't see your results necessarily immediately. So you do an experiment, and best case scenario, you'll see the end result, which is usually a paper that is published in 2-3 years, and it's hard to deal with sometimes. And when you have like several projects that are like that, it becomes a little bit more frustrating. Another thing that I realized already in the end, actually, of my PhD, that actually if there would be a permanent postdoc or research-based position, that's what I would really like to do, actually. Just stay on the level of the postdoc and just continue doing the research, not participating in any race towards the professorship, participating in any race for publishing any papers, and just doing a quality research like I would like to do it. This is something as well I realized, okay, if my goal is actually not become a professor, then what am I actually doing here? Because that's the end goal. It's very linear career track, basically, in the academia. Unless you find a teaching position and you go more towards that, but that's quite rare, at least in the European scope, as far as I know. So that was another thing that I realized. Okay, this is something not for me. Plus some of the rules of the academic game. There was something else that I started to basically doubt about. As well. It's not very stable job as well. Every 2-3 years you have to move. You have to think of your contract. Where am I going to get the funding from? This was something else that I realized, that probably this is not exactly how I would like to live with my life, considering the fact that I already moved quite some time. And I made this decision to quit academia, and I've started checking for and applying for jobs, really different jobs. Like, it was a really different range of the things I was applying for. And in the end, I ended up in the company Schelstraete Delacourt Associates. That's the name of the company. It's just the family names of the founders of the company. It's the executive search company. What they basically do, they are consultants for big corporations or medium corporations for the searches for executives, for the searches of top managers, and I'm one of the consultants. But yeah, if you want, I can tell you now what I exactly do. But if you have a question, just go ahead and shoot it, and then because I think I already talked too much answering your first question.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mariam, for this introduction. Actually, I have to tell you that I feel for you. I was also doing fundamental research, and that was one of the most frustrating parts of the PhD for me, that I couldn't really meet the beneficiaries of my projects, and I have a belief that there were no beneficiaries, actually, in some of these projects. So I can tell, yes, this is, yeah, I think most people who I know who have that fundamental research as a main line of their PhD research, and who are actually also surrounded by more applied scientists, like we often have the situation we often have in neuroscience. That might be very frustrating indeed. And after a few months, maybe you don't feel that difference, but after a few years, I think it can burn you from the inside, and I had the same feelings. But we have
a question as well
from Lakshmi. If I may read the question. What was the observation of your PhD work with respect to multitasking?
So actually, I generalized a lot what exactly I did. So I'll tell you a little bit, quite shortly, what exactly I did. So my research was about reward, how we process reward during the cognitive conflict in tasks. So you probably that's a very very popular task. It's called a Stroop task. And the Stroop task is basically when you present people with the name of the color. So, for example, red, but it's colored not in the color of the word, so not red, but it's presented in a green color, right? So, for example, the word red in green. And the task of people is to name the color of the ink. So it's quite difficult because you always want to read the name of the word. So you always want to pronounce it red, but actually it's a green color, right? So you have to the correct answer is green. So that's a variation, generally speaking, of the multitasking, because you have to sort of well, it's not exactly multitasking, but it's a cognitive conflict in task. And basically what we did, we rewarded people in the correct for the correct answers, and we didn't reward or we take the money from them on the incorrect or slow answers. But that's what we did. And just general observation is that usually people are much better in the tasks, in the cognitive conflict in tasks or multitasking tasks, task switching experiments when they are rewarded compared when they are not rewarded. And more generally speaking as well, there is a certain threshold of the reward that at a certain point, after reaching that threshold, it actually doesn't even matter anymore. So there are no differences between the answers. And also, of course, reward is a very, very, very subjective concept. So it can be for one person, plus €1 is actually big reward. For another person, is not. So that's also something you should look after. So just in very short, briefly, what I did.
Okay, and I think the question was also about multitasking. So because I think Also in your bio, you mentioned a lot about different types of experiments. So I think maybe the question was about that as well.
Yes, the multitasking. If you mean my combination of different techniques, what I did, I indeed did a lot of, but that's not. It's a multitasking from the point what kind of a methods I used when I was actually researching these topics. I did a lot of combined experiments, EEG combined with fMRI, EEG combined with the eye tracking. Eye tracking is the device that basically tracks where your eyes are moving on when you're performing a task on the screen. Combined TMS with the EEG. TMS is it's a very sadistic kind of way of measuring the brain activity when you do not record the brain activity, but you actually stimulate the brain. You just send a very subtle electrical impulses to the brain of the participant, and to see mainly it's related to the motor brain regions or visual brain regions. So that I did with the combination with the EEG. I think the main thing was I had this very long running project of 4 years combined EEG with fMRI, and that's something that also got me a little bit frustrated during my academic career. So if we talk about the multitasking in that sense, I'm not sure whether the question was exactly about that, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's then proceed. Before I ask you the next question from the audience, I'm curious. So why did you go into this particular direction? Because when you think about it, hiring executives is quite distant from doing neurocognitive experiments. So among all the other options on the market, why did you choose this one?
Well, I'll start from the fact that actually any other job is quite different from the cognitive neuroscience. If we talk about the private sector or public sector, doesn't really matter, because it's not only fundamental research, but it's also something that you come out from the academia and you're actually objectively, it's much more difficult to find a job for people who studied the things that I did, because it's so multidisciplinary. So you're a psychologist, but you're actually not a psychologist because you don't have a license to be a therapist. What you can do, you can coach, but for that maybe you have to go for some short training or something. You know how to do analysis, but you're actually not a data scientist, or you're actually not a data analyst. You also have to go through some, even online maybe, courses to be able to do so, because you're not in a competition with people who learned data science. You know how to work with all this medical machinery like fMRI. You know how to work with the TMS, which is also can be part of the medical treatment sometimes. But you cannot go and work in a hospital, because despite the fact that you know how it works, but you're not an engineer, you're not a physician, physicist, not a physician, physicist, who actually studied all the things behind it. So why am I always saying it? That it's actually because I actually had a lot of flexibility of what can I do, because none of the things that I did during my academia I could have translated and I could have done it outside the academia in the private sector, unless I would start my own startup, for example, unless I would try to get into the company actually who also has EEG or eye tracking, and the company who does research like that, neuromarketing, or maybe more like a behavioral studies. But that's a certain niche. It's a really niche study. So the reason why I ended up doing this is after half a year of searching already in the last 6 months of my PhD, when I was searching for jobs. And I tried many things. I applied for many positions as a data analyst. I applied as the coordinator of clinical studies, for the behavioral researcher in a company like that I mentioned right now. This was just the job that came to my attention as a research consultant. They needed specifically a PhD level of people. They needed a person who can coordinate a lot of projects, who could do a lot of interviews, structured, non-structured interviews. So in a way, this is something I also learned back in the days during my bachelor studies in psychology, actually. So that kind of rang the bell of what I was also studying and doing as an internship during my bachelor studies, when I was when I was studying just basics in psychology. And that was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to have a bit of a more human interaction as well. I wanted to work in the team, to be more involved in the team from the corporate aspect of that. And after I also met my future boss, I also felt like there was a good connection there as well. And in general, I thought this is something else that I could do. It's a challenge. It's something that I've never done before, that I didn't study for. Back then, I also had another opportunity that they offered me the job, but because of certain conditions, I didn't take. And that was already a moment that I was searching for a long time. And I thought, okay, I'll just take it. If I don't like it, I can always quit. It's really different. You should really think of it a bit differently, because in academia, it's really hard to quit, to be honest, because you get attached so emotionally to the project. And in the end, academia creates this kind of a allure around it, that if you quit, you're a quitter, you're a loser a little bit, which is not a case at all. I disagree with that. But here, if I don't like it, I can quit and do something else. But at least I will get the experience in the business sector, which is really needed for many jobs if you quit the academia. That was actually another reason why I decided to take this job, because I am in so much contact with the business world, understanding how different industries work, how the business in generally works, from the financial, from the philosophical point of view as well. So that's really great experience. And after that, when you're actually applying for different jobs in the private sector, you don't have to really prove to the potential employer that you actually know what is the business world, because they look at the academics like these naive people who are coming, smart but naive people who are coming from like another planet, and they don't have any idea of what it is. But in this case, they were quite open about to hire PhD who just basically is making this jump. So I got lucky in a way that they really appreciated that.
Actually, if I can add something, actually, I don't know about you, but when I look back at myself 3 years ago, I think I was very, very naive, actually, in many ways. And it cost me a lot of money that I lost on some very speculative investments, and a lot of projects where I was working for nothing, basically being promised some shares or some other benefits by some con artists, and like they never really, didn't end up with any benefits from me, just people running with my work. So I have to say, well, I mean, I don't know about most people, but I feel like after all these years in academia, I was not really prepared for adult life in many ways. So
No,
now
I
I'm,
know what you mean.
yeah, so I think to some extent it might be true that we have to kind of relearn how to live life in the open world once we leave. Uh, but actually, I also have to tell you that I totally feel for what you said about the fact that you feel like you don't fit really anywhere, because I had quite similar feelings. So when I finished, I also my programming skills were good, but not on the professional level. Actually, I was coding, but only for the purposes of my own projects, and it's like nowhere near the level that you have
Indeed.
to work as a well-paid software developer. And I knew that I'm far, far, far away from that level, and
Hmm.
it would take me ages, and probably it's not the right thing to do. And the same exactly about the management skills. Like I managed projects, but I was not trusted that I had management skills like good enough to hire me as a manager. And like I can totally see what you mean, because I also had very niche topic. It was
Hmm.
causal inference, and causal inference now it's getting
Right.
a bit more popular, but back then it was very niche, and everyone was invested into machine learning and prediction paradigms, and causal inference was like a black sheep, this unnecessary complicated thing that, because usually you don't have enough evidence to establish any causal links, it's much harder,
Hmm.
because you need much more information to establish causality than to make a predictive model, because predictive models are based on correlations, and that's enough to make a predictive model. But it's not enough to establish causality. So causality is much harder to get, and most of the time you get nothing out of your analysis. Like, you're very lucky if you can, get anything. So I felt like, okay, so I have specialistic knowledge that is basically useless, because no one really is interested in using it, and I totally see what you mean, because I felt very similar.
Yeah, but that's what I want to I want to comment on two things. The first thing is that we're like these naive people and we actually don't know anything about outside world. That's how I felt like a year ago when I decided to make the switch. I realized I know nothing actually. I don't know how the private sector works, how the public sector works, more or less how the public sector works, because it's actually not. I mean, university is also part of the public sector in a way, depending on the country as well. I know, but and this is something I think this is a fault of both academia actually, because academia doesn't prepare you at all, doesn't give you any information of what you can what you can do afterwards, doesn't give you any encouragement or any how should I say, if what I notice in some places, not exactly in my department, but I have a wide network of the PhDs and postdocs, academic people around the world. Many of them would complain to me that they would say that, if I start talking about quitting academia, people look at me like, like I'm a fundamental loser and I just failed. And that creates this kind of a this bubble around you that you don't want to share with anybody about your thoughts of quitting. At the same time, you're afraid to ask around. You don't know anybody who you can ask as well. What is it like to quit? What can I do? At the same time, you also don't have much of the connections unless you have some friends who are working a lot in the private sector or outside the academia. You have no connections, so you don't have anybody to ask, and you actually don't even think about that. Maybe that actually person in the office next to me is also thinking the same way, and that's what actually most of the times that's the case, and that's what people don't realize, and they don't talk to each other in an open way, and that's usually depends on the department, depends on what is the culture there, whether it's a bit unhealthy culture in the terms that the academia is seen as the only way how to do it. But on the other hand, I also think it's it's part of the responsibility of the researcher who decided to quit, right? Because you have to, what you have to know is that you have to become much more flexible, much more bold, much more, you have to understand that what you've done in academia, and even in your case and in my case, we've done a very fundamental research. So it's not like the things that we did, we can take them and exactly do the same things, right? Like data analysis, the type of the data analysis I did, the type of data analysis you did, we're not going to be able to use it, right? But what can we use it? We can use the analytical mindset that we have in order to run this data analysis, and that we can transfer as a soft skill for the potential for the potential employer. And that's something many people don't realize, and that's something I knew in advance. And right now, working in the sector of job hunting, of job recruiting, and so on, I realized that there are many jobs that they don't actually care what is your background, what did you do. They care about, maybe that's the best case scenario, that you have a diploma, like master diploma. So it means that you're actually cognitively, capable of reaching that stage, or you have a PhD, depending on the job. And they care about your soft skills as well, like things like communication, which, let's be honest, a lot of people in academia are having sometimes problems with, because like how you communicate in academia, sometimes it's not exactly the way how you communicate in a private sector. That's completely different dynamic. Things like analytical thinking, things like, for example, resilience to stress, right? Which we can also have in most cases, because academia is a quite stressful environment. So in a way, we're also not being taught about our soft skills, so to say. And in a way, we're also not, sometimes it takes us much longer to realize that actually we're capable of much more, many more things. And not only these hard skills of working with the EEG, analyzing a certain set of data, running single cell recordings, and so on and so on. But the last thing that I would like to add in that sense, it really depends on what you did in as a PhD or a postdoc. It is true that for what I've done, for my specialization, for my background, it is objectively harder to find a job compared to the person who did a PhD in engineering. That's much more difficult, because engineering, everybody needs engineers, even us, we need engineers, in the neuroscience. And that's something like, it's another topic, but the engineers are like starting to take over a lot of jobs just because they have this background, But that's another topic. So It is true that objectively sometimes it's harder and it's easier depending on what you study. But in any case, I don't know anybody from my network who quit academia and who's like right now searching for jobs for a year, for 2, for 3 years, cannot find anything. Everybody finds something. And most of the times people are happy of what they found in the end. I mean, they can switch a couple of jobs before they find what they really want to do. But in the end, it's okay. I mean, it turns out okay. It's not like you're going to be in the dark hole of the non-existence forever after you quit the PhD. I mean, it's just a matter of how flexible you are as well. That's also important.
Yeah, I think it's really important to really bury the previous life and at some point say, okay, I'm done, and really focus on the future and stop, grieving about the past, and that's difficult. And actually, I sometimes wonder, why they don't tell us more about the possible difficulties and caveats before we start the PhD program, because indeed, there should be some guidelines or some, infomercial just showing, these are the statistics. you have 2% chance of getting professorship and 98% chance of going out at some point.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
with this
Yeah.
this particular PhD, your chances of landing a job here and there are this. So just think about your possible scenarios for the future, and this is your scope of choices and opportunities. And like, do you really think that this is the best choice for you at the moment, right?
Yeah, I think in general they should have like before you start, in the end of master program, they should have like a couple of seminars or whatever, mental health during PhD, what you will lose and what you will most probably lose, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, that's not being done because it's yeah, I actually don't even know why they don't do it because yeah, I don't know. I think it's just also not sometimes it's not just a good image, right, of the PhD. And the problem is that, and I think it's one of the biggest problems of the academia right now is that there are many more PhDs than, like, the ratio of PhDs are much higher than the ratio of the available postdocs. And that's something that I don't know how is it possible to solve this problem. Either become more selective or either open up more postdocs, but that's related to fundings and money. So it's just a problem that there are like 80% of the academics, they just cannot find PhDs, they cannot find a postdoc afterwards because it's just less postdoc positions.
Yeah, totally.
But I see a couple of also questions coming on.
Yeah, so I think we are really interested about your current job and how it looks like. So there is a question from Lakshmi. Can you
Yes.
describe more? So tell us more about your current work.
So my current work, my title right now, they call me research consultant. Why research? Because what I basically do, so there is a client, a certain, I will just explain it on the example. There is a certain client. Client usually is a big company or the mid-sized company. And I deal with different industries. The company can be as well in the IT company, and it can also be, I don't know, a company who produces cars or who produces wind turbines or produces food and beverages, something like that. So it's really like a wide scope of the industries. And that company needs, they need to hire a CEO, for example, or CIO, or any other top management level professional. They come to us, and we have usually a briefing with the CEO or whoever is going to be the boss of that position. And usually these are also HR people, HR directors. They're also presented there. So we had a briefing about that position. They explain what kind of a profile they're looking for, what kind of responsibilities are there. We're talking about the culture of the company, which is also very important to find a person who can match the culture as well. And then basically my work starts. What I do, why is it research? Because I do the research, well, research not in the academic data-related research. It's not that. It's more of the more a research quantitative. Let's call it quantitative. Not quantitative, qualitative research. Sorry. So what I do basically, I try to figure out what are the other companies that can match the culture of our client. What are the other companies they do more or less the same type of the business that our client, or they can have interest in people as well. And sometimes I have to call these companies and to talk to the people at the reception there, for example, try to figure out, okay, what exactly do you do? What is your business? And so on and so forth. I also get in touch with the potential people who can be interested in this position. And basically, it's not only research of the industry, the market, of the business market and the industry. And it's not only a research of the potential people, but it can sometimes be a bit of a hunting as well. So I can act sometimes as a hunter as well, a person who can just boldly pick up the phone and call a person and ask, "Hey, would you be interested in this job opportunity? If yes, yes. If no, it's okay. I hang on the phone and that's okay." Yes.
Then I think I have a question for you, because maybe I watched too many Hollywood movies, but my layman's vision of how this process usually looks like, if one company in competitive field looks for a really high executive, then I would expect that they already know who is the big fish in the industry, and that they by themselves try to buy out the good people. So I'm trying to figure out what's the added value for them of going to this external recruitment company, so that you have to kind of, since they already are in the market, and you have to learn from scratch what are the players and what are the different companies there and what are the different options. So what is for them, like, what's the value of delegating this task to someone else?
Well, the added value delegating specifically to our company is that our company is really tailor-made. That's how we call ourselves, tailor-made research for the positions. Not only we are searching for these people, but these candidates are basically going through psychological and business assessment as well. Now, you would say that the HRs in this company can also do that, but you would be you would be surprised how many HRs actually are really, really not good in assessing the people's capabilities and assessing the people's even cognitive and cultural fits to the company. And moreover, there are many companies where the HR directors, they're more responsible for the they call it soft and hard HR skills, basically for payroll, basically for the talking to the unions, more responsible for the office management, and so on and so forth, or maybe a little bit more responsible for just making sure that all the people at the company are in the right place, happy. So many times that the HR people in the companies, they do not actually have the actual recruitment or talent acquisition responsibility. But even if they do, this takes a lot of time for them. That's a lot of time actually to search for a person, to contact, first of all, to search for the company, to understand, okay, is this a potential interesting company or not? Of course, they also advise us when we start collaborating with them. They say, okay, these companies, they do more or less the same things. Maybe check out there. Maybe somebody is interested there. So they also give us advices. But it takes just a lot of time to do so. You not only have to just call the person and ask, okay, are you interested or not? And if that person is interested, then basically no, it's not. It's also a couple of rounds of the interviews, talking about their experiences, explaining what the company does, whether it can fit as well. So it's a very open conversation, and it takes a lot of time just to find this person, just to make contact with this person, get in touch with that person, just to kind of touch the bases about this possibility. So many companies, they don't want to get involved in this because they will just simply lose a lot of time. That as well. Why they also, that's maybe is going to sound a little bit arrogant, but why they also address to us, specifically to our company. In my company, most of the people are on the PhD level. So most of the people who work in my company, they are PhDs. Like I would say 50% of my company, they are PhD graduates. The other 50% is master graduates. You would be surprised how actually again, I don't want to sound a bit arrogant, but that's something that private sector, they really value sometimes. They think, okay, the person who got a PhD, that's going to be super intelligent person, will know the things better, will have this capability of assessing people much better. So that's why they also come to us, specifically to our company. But most of the times it's just they don't want to spend the time on doing this work because it's really a lot of work. They either need to hire internally just a separate person who does the recruitment only, and many companies, they don't have it. Many HRs don't spend their time on doing the recruitment only, or they just do many more other stuff related to the HR, and again, they just don't want to spend time on that as well.
Okay, so that sounds really positive about PhDs, that they are actually appreciated for their work in HRs. And I actually then my question would be, like, natural question that comes to my mind is, okay, so what is the characteristics of a good executive? So what type of people are you looking for?
Oh, that really depends on the company culture, really. Sometimes I'm having requests of having more entrepreneurial people, for example, people who are really good in selling stuff and selling themselves as well. Sometimes I'm having more, for example, coming from more IT companies, requests of really people who are really technical. You don't need to do a lot of like entrepreneurial things with them. Just they would know their stuff and they would be very intelligent. But in general, if I would have to summarize, usually these are people who they do not oversell themselves. They're not bragging about themselves. They are really structured in the way how they think. They're really humble as well. That's actually something that is very appreciated, that they're humble about their achievements, even if they achieved a lot. And of course, they actually did all the things that they indicated in CV. For example, if the company asks, if our client asks a person who has a lot of experience with the managing a big team, that actually should be the case, But it's really hard to generalize in that sense because it really depends on the company. I would say really being humble, smart, constructive, and really be good with people as well. Be good people communicator and people manager.
Okay, so let's get back to the questions from the audience. So let's now move to the question from Fadi. Would you consider going back to academia at some point?
I would. I think I would. And sometimes I'm having these thoughts, but right now I would say at this moment I'm not going to go back, but I cannot say that I won't change my mind in the future. The only thing is that I think I have to be aware of the fact that the longer I take that decision to jump back, the harder it is, especially in my field, because it evolves technically so fast that I might go back a year or 2 years later, and I will have to learn yet again, how to work with the EEG of fMRI, because, for example, they will now introduce not 3 Tesla scanners, but 5 Tesla scanners and something like that, for example. So I have to be aware of that, and I also have to be aware that many professors or postdocs that I'm going to work for, if I go back, they will have this question: why did you actually quit in the first place, and why did you have this break? And that's something many people can see as not motivated, as me not being motivated enough actually to do the research. So that can be an obstacle. But I mean, I cannot say that I would never consider going back. But at this stage, probably I'm not. I wouldn't like to go back. And it's also the longer I take that decision, the harder for me is to go back actually.
Totally, but I know a lot of people who did come back, so it's totally doable if you're really determined. So let's see. That was actually my next question. So I was thinking, do you see this? Do you see yourself in the long run in the human resources and in this type of profession, or do you see this as a stage in your development?
Good question. I think yet I am really curious about the other things as well. What I could do, for example, one of the things that I was thinking to study for, well, study meaning to read more about it, to maybe attend some online workshops and online courses, is your user experience research. It's actually what is a little bit more related to what I've been doing in the from the point of the data management, so to say. So that's something that I would still like to learn more about. There are some other things maybe more related to the coaching, like career coaching, for example, that is also very interesting for me. So at this point, I cannot say that this is the path that that HR, well, it's not even really an HR, but like a consultant, more like a consultant job is something that I would like to do for the rest of my life. I'm comfortable right now at this job. I like certain aspects of this, but at the same time, I don't see, definitely not going to do HR. HR is really not something that I would like to do for many reasons. But the consultant, yeah, this is something that this type of the position of consulting people, it's really quite different of what different from the way of working how I used to work during the PhD, because here you depend much more on the clients, you build different relationships with the clients, it's more client oriented job. So this is something that I'm still trying to figure out whether I really like it or not. But the HR, if we talk about the pure HR, no, I'm not even considering it, because the HR is really not something that I would like to do.
Okay, and actually, I still have one question about the executives and hiring executives. Just came to my mind. So, do you sometimes also have applicants or hires that have PhD title, or that's not very common?
No, I do have, I would say like 40% of the people that where we try to hire, or we at least contact regarding this high positions, top management positions, they have the degree of they have the PhD degree. Especially people who are in the hardcore industries, for example, in chemicals, for example, in IT, for example, in what is the other example that I can? For example, in the engineering, many of them they have a PhD. It's not exactly the requirement of the company, of our clients sometimes, that the candidate should have a PhD degree. But most of the times, the people who did a PhD, they also have a much more much more, not interesting, but much more successful career track.
That's a very positive thing to hear. That's great news. I'm surprised it's that many, that much percentage, but then that's good news for
Again,
all.
it depends on the industry. If you're searching for salespeople, you really, to be honest, you really don't need to have a degree to be a good salesperson. You really need to have a good communication skills and good, good ability to network. And that's not something that you actually study for. You either have it or you don't have it. You just can a bit tune it. But for those type of the positions, like a commercial sales positions, it's really not necessary at all. Like a bachelor level, master level, more than enough. So it depends, huh? It depends. If you go into more technical, or you go a little bit more to the you go the higher in the rank as well, and even if it's and plus on top of that, if it's technical, then then the percentage of the PhD graduates increases.
That's great. I guess it's hard to start to actually get your first executive position, but I can imagine in the long run to have that technical skill in your hand, that's always an advantage. So that's really positive what you're saying. That's really great. Okay, so next, Fadi is saying, in the States, graduate student associations usually organize events in which they invite PhD graduates who've been working in the academia and industry to tell their story and hold Q&A sessions. I found them very helpful. Yes, actually, there is a big tendency to to do that as well in Europe, and I can see more and more such events. So that's good. That's great. And in a sense, the more the better, I think. So there is, it's like job market is also changing very quickly. So I think the more information you get and the more open you are about the opportunities, the better. So totally, and there should be more of such events. And Lakshmi is asking, this is not related to whatever you spoke about, but could you share your views on evolution of emotions in humans from point of view of our development? I'm not sure if this is actually a question for this webinar, honestly speaking.
No, and I won't be able to answer it because emotions is really not the topic that I studied. Emotions is really a really different different field of cognitive science, cognitive psychology. It's really also in cognitive neuropsychology. It's really also divided. You have your niche, and you kind of stay in your niche. So I cannot tell anything about emotion studies. Sorry, Lakshmi. Sorry.
Okay. So I would like to ask you then, is there anything so far that you regret or you would do otherwise, you would do differently if you had the chance to do it one more time? Like any skill that you would build earlier, or any like career decision that you would take differently?
No, I don't have regrets. Definitely no regrets regarding my PhD. So if I would go back, like almost already 5 years back, and I would yet to have to make this decision again to do PhD or not. I would still do PhD. I think I would just know already in advance what it's gonna be, and maybe I would process different negative PhD related experiences differently. Wouldn't take it so emotionally as well. Wouldn't stress out too much in the situations where there is actually no need to stress out. But that's you of course you can never know. You can learn it only on the run. But maybe what I would do is that during my PhD, I would maybe would consider to subscribing for some at least online courses, like courses, for example, about whatever actually is interesting for you. If you're more interested in management skills, go ahead. Just subscribe for like people management, for example. If you're more interested in a project management. If you're more interested in data analysis or data analytics in business, for that. If you're more interested in Python, for that. So I would just be a little bit more proactive in a way, learning something else on the fly as well. But that's always easier to say than to do, because during PhD I was also so overloaded with work that I would have to work on the weekends, in the evenings sometimes, which I actually don't do right now at all. But so it's easier to say rather than to do. But I think if you have this time, it's a good investment in your future, because you come out from the academia and you also have this other skills as well that you gathered by just just going through an online course, for example, or attending a couple of like intense seminars or something like that. So I would definitely do that, especially if someone one wants to leave academia and go to more business related sector, then I would definitely spend some time to kind of learning more about the industry, how the business works actually.
And then I have one more question for you today, which is, so do you have any general advice for early career researchers? And it could be anything. It could be any type of advice, something you would like to share?
I think, actually, maybe a couple of advices. First of all, is that try not to be afraid of leaving academia, because really it's not the end of the world. It's not, you should not perceive it as a failure as well, because it's definitely not a failure. It's just you deciding to do something else. And actually, most of the times, it's much more, it's a very brave thing to do, because in a way you're completely bending your career and what you've been doing before, compared to the other peers who are also, of course, it's also great that some people stay in academia. We really need them, but sometimes not all the times, but sometimes I see that some people continue and stay in academia just because they see that they don't have any other choice, and it's more on the inertia that they continue. And then years later, when they're done their first or the second postdoc, it strikes them, and then it's a bit harder, right, actually, to quit. So don't be afraid. Don't be a failure. Get informed about what you can do by talking to people who quit, by being actively interested in the things, in the topics, in the skills, not only within your academic specialization, but for example, if you're interested in, in design, just attend a couple of courses on the digital design, for example. Or if you're also interested in marketing, you can also attend some courses in marketing. Also talk to your colleagues as well, because you will be surprised with how many people next door, they also think like you. It's just you stay in your own bubble, and you kind of, stay in your own juice, and you don't talk to other people. But by talking to other people, you will see that actually you're not alone. And yes, just also be quite bold, and try to sell yourself very, very smartly, in a way that you actually, any PhD, doesn't really matter what you've done, but you have a lot of skills that are being valued outside as well. And it might not be the skill of conducting an EEG experiment, for example, or analyzing brain images, for example, but it can be your analytical thinking. It can be your ability to solve problems, your ability to work hard, your ability to understand difficult mental problems, mental riddles. Your ability to, I can continue I can make quite a long list. So also be aware of these soft skills that you have, and also be aware of other capabilities rather than the hard skills that you got during your PhD, which is very, very valued. And just also, just get informed. Also, this type of the webinars and your projects, they also help a lot. And I think that they should become more common as well.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I can confirm, that people who are thinking of leaving academia, they often behave a bit like couples that are trying to get pregnant. No one knows other than people who are like the closest friends and the closest family, and everyone else only knows when it's already done. When the belly is big, then they know about it. And the same with PhDs shifting jobs. Like you only know about it because you see the status on LinkedIn changing into a company. So sometimes it's really. I was also getting surprised by my own friends actually all of a sudden changing their statuses without telling me anything beforehand. So totally, I see the same phenomenon. All right, great. Thank you so much, Mariam. And maybe one last thing I might ask you: what should we wish you on your way?
What you should wish me on my way? Just more courage, I guess, because that's something that it's definitely needed to make further steps as well. Because because there are so many more things to yet to learn and to try out. It's not the end of my career, definitely. So maybe that's, and a bit of luck. Luck is always good in in that sense.
Okay, great. Then I wish you courage. Courage is always,
Thank you.
yeah, courage is always wanted. Okay, great. Thank you so much, and
Thank
thank
you.
you guys for joining us today, and thanks for sharing your story, Mariam. And
Yes, thank you, everybody. Yeah, thank you for listening as well.
okay, great. So have a nice evening, everyone, and see you on some other occasion. And yeah, take care, and see you soon. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.